Hey, everybody, welcome back. I'm Joy Martin here with my co host, Lindsay Pollard, and our special guest today, Tiffany Martin from the DandeLion House, which you'll hear more about. But we're going to jump right in because we had such a great session with the first session that we did, the interview with Tiffany on maternity health care crisis. Oh my goodness, go back and listen to that. It was just phenomenal, and there were so many more things that we could go into there. But now we're going to scoot forward into relationship crisis that is current. This is 2023. And we got a lot of material to work with on relationship crisis. So I want to jump right in to that. Wow, Tiffany, what has God spoken to you in that area and just moved your heart in? Start in, sister.
Well, thank you. And thanks for having me again. So excited to be here with you ladies. You know, these are topics that people aren't really delving into. So I'm so glad that you've chosen to do so. I think that 2020 did a lot for all of us, right?
Yeah.
While it was a pandemic of sorts, and there was lots of people who lost loved ones, and a lot of uncertainty crept up, I think it exposed some things as well.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I think it exposed dealt with or deals with what I call relational incompetence. And this very clear famine of relationship. I found that it was interesting that the 2020 crisis exposed what was really already underway and happening in so many hearts and homes. I think we saw that there were statistics where married couples were now having to stay at home and work, and then divorces started happening fairly quickly after that because they'd grown accustomed to not being around each other, not connecting. The kids had to be home, so now there's another level of stress. Like, what am I going to do with these kids? It's really funny. I'm a homeschool mom, a recently retired homeschool mom, right? So I homeschooled both of my children from a very young age. My daughter is now successful on Dean's List at University of North Alabama, and she went all the way through homeschooling. My son homeschooled up until last year. Now he's in a public school locally, and with his dad, who's a public school educator, and he's doing great. But there was a time where homeschoolers were looked at like, "Oh, you're weird." 2020 came and everybody was calling like, what should we do now? Because all the homeschool families was like, well, join us. We're still going at it, you know.
But we've been doing this for years.
We've been doing this. It's working for us. But kind of, that was a little bit of a segue. But coming back to the kids coming home, you had the convergence of family now at home for like a long period of time. It's like, what do we do with that? And now during this crisis in 2020, we're having to deal with the reality of what's been happening for years. This has been going on for a long time. And the fact that there's a level of relational incompetence is evident in the divorce rates and in the fact that these kids are not being able to connect socially in a healthy way, nor with their parents in a healthy way. I'm finding that more often, and I think statistics prove, I think the Barna group is one of my favorites that have statistics around this, as well as the Gallup National Health Polls. But basically, young people are escaping into their phones and devices, along with most Americans, particularly men. They're attracted to these apps and all of these games and things, and they're creating relationship in a device. We see the uptick of relationship connections online. Most often are not substantial or of substance, but they're virtual. They're virtual relationships.
Yeah.
So when you ask families to come back into their real environment and like talk, connect, get along, like all of a sudden it's like, how do we do that? What do you mean? I literally have seen people talk to each other in the house by text. Like in the other room, I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you
I've not ever
texting?
done that, I don't think.
I mean,
Oh, I
and
don't know who's done that.
listen, I can't tell you that I've not done it maybe once or twice, but I am not a friend of devices because
No, I know.
I have seen
No.
the subtleties of how
Yeah.
this works. And I think that
Yeah.
loneliness is a part of that, where people
Yeah.
are really lonely and seeking connection and just not knowing how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and I wish I had pulled it up already, but I don't know if you guys have ever listened to Carey Nieuwhof. He's a guy, I think he's in Canada, a pastor in Canada, but he does leadership podcasts, and he interviewed a lady, and I'll try to put that in the thing too, about this crisis with children and teenagers being so isolated and creating so much anxiety and depression, and why that has ramped up so much. And she relates it a lot to going internally to this, you know what I mean? And yeah, it's making more of a change than we realize. Go ahead, Lindsay, I see it.
It's and then just to piggyback off of what both of you are saying, biblically, when you look at the Garden of Eden and God created all the animals and created Adam, and then he said, man shouldn't be alone. You know what I'm saying? So we've always been created to be in relationship.
Right.
Face-to-face relationship, in relationship with one another. So to me, I'm not going to say this is, oh, it's just demonic, but in a sense, it's really anti-biblical and what the original purpose was.
Right.
To be isolated, I mean, when we were growing up, okay, you had them big, I'm dating myself, but we had them big old phones, them really big phones that you had to hold with two hands, really. Besides the dial-up ones that the kids now don't even know what is that? How do you
Rotary.
Right. I mean, all of this stuff is foreign to the kids these days. But I mean, I remember when we all sat at the table to eat dinner and we talked about each other's day and we communicated. And so now in 2023, you have the complete opposite to, enjoy with what you're talking about. This isolation is ruining communication that we're supposed to have with one another, So, when you talk about the loneliness factor, Tiffany, talk a little bit more about that.
Right.
Well, I thought it was interesting to statistically speaking that there are 44 million people roughly across the world, adults, and 17% of those are lonely, literally. Just isolated, feeling all kinds of depression. And it's been clear that most of folks are actually spending more time on their phone than they are with people and interfacing. And I think that the honest truth is that we found ourselves out of relationship, and the concept of relationship being biblical and being so foundational in the heart of the Father. Honestly, this is how we get lost even in religion, is that we don't know how to even relate to him. It's like after a while, this breaks down all the way to the point where now you can actually say there is no God, where it's getting to a point where you find yourself again isolated, lonely, and now the relationship foundations are completely fractured and so done away with, to where now you can have a complete dehumanized experience. You can have the introduction of robots, and you can set up a whole world of Star Wars like experiences, and everybody's okay with it, so to speak. And I'm just saying that in just a little bit, but I think that we're kind of headed there if we're not careful. And some of the things that you described, Lindsay, about growing up and having those table conversations and making it intentional are kind of ways that we can kind of win that back if we really focus and really try. And I think we really need to be thinking about what it takes to become relationally competent. And that will obviously mean shut down the devices, cut the TV off, decide to create boundaries where you're not on your phone and you do power down. I mean, even the phones get upset when we don't. Have y'all not had the phone to say it's overheated, you need to stop? Like, even the phones need a break. Like, you know. So anyway, I just think that there's all of these various ways to go about reversing the trend, but it's a major hill to climb. And the more we're in our social media and finding community, well, I don't find that they're genuine, authentic often, but you're following people online and you're so focused on the virtual experiences that what is natural, tangible, and real becomes foreign.
Is that what you mean by dehumanizing relationships? You said that phrase and I've written it down, and then you said it again. So just define that.
Well, we have 5 senses. I believe that we were created to experience life and life more abundantly. I believe we were created to connect, touch, feel, smell, see. There is healing in connection and community. There is power in connection and community. There is this very foundational way that we were created by God's design to literally be in fellowship with one another, authentic fellowship. And so when I say dehumanizing, it's basically stripping us of the basic 5 sense experience. We're not seeing each other for real. We're not touching each other for real. We're not exchanging any real in any real way. It's very fake and surface. There's no intimacy. And then we wonder why we can't experience power, why we can't experience another level of joy and connection. Well, we're not engaging our 5 senses. And to be human means that has to be functioning at a pretty consistent rate. Think about something as simple as handwriting and reading a book. Okay, handwriting and reading a book requires us to hold a pen or pencil or instrument and purposely control the motions. And I do this actually as an exercise with young people that I work with sometimes from a tutoring standpoint on occasion, just to see if they can actually do this, because it engages all the senses. You have to focus, you have to pay attention, you have to tactically do this movement, right? Well, when you read a book, you got to turn the page, you've got to track. There's a whole nother level of work dynamically happening in our brains and in our sensory, where neurologically we are connecting, whether it's connecting concepts, connecting relationally with information, because you can't comprehend unless you're making connections with what this information means to this information. This is why learning in schools is kind of subpar, because we're checking boxes more than ever, and they're doing this with their finger and touch screening, and it's just, we're losing sense. We're losing senses and sense. And that's what I believe is dehumanizing with our relationships. We just can't connect.
Okay, so I love to open a brand new book, and the first thing I do is smell it. See? I mean, and so, we got the Kindle and books online, and I understand, like, my husband has really poor eyesight. So for him, because of that, it is easier for him to read a book online because he can increase the font size. So, I mean, I get that there's different reasons for that, but there is nothing to me like opening it and like you said, underlining, phrases that you want to remember or something like that. You can't, highlighting is not the same. No. Highlighting, with electronically. And so, we don't want to lose that touch, smell. I love that you connected it to that. And okay, so relationally, keep going. What is this doing to us, and what's the damage, and how can we fix it? Can you
right?
All that?
Well, you know what? I'll do my part. I really do think that it boils down to choose ye this day whom you will serve. And that is a moment by moment proposition for all of us in every way. And it's not exclusive of relationships. We need to make a decision. What is important to us? What's the priority? Really, what is the priority? And I think that if we can make the decision that relationships are important, then our actions and behavior should line up with that. If that means then I do need to consider shutting down my devices at some point, or make it more even intentional to say, you know what? I have a dear friend and she's doing it. She does not turn her phone on until noon every day. And sometimes it bugs me because I'm an early bird and I'm already up at like an insane number of hours. By the time she's on, I'm like, oh, I got to wait till noon, and she's Eastern time. So it's even longer, you know? But she's intentional. She's like, I will not power my phone up until noon, and it can't be that important and that serious for real. And if it is that serious, I will find out about it. We used to deal with that when we had the rotary phones, and you had to call somebody's house and had answer machines, and too bad you didn't reach them. We figured it out. We lived. Guess what? People who are listening, life actually worked out fine when we didn't have all the things. Like, I mean, I survived. We're here. We did all right.
Yeah.
You know,
if you were driving in your car and you didn't have a cell phone, you had to wait till you got home.
That's it. Yeah.
And there it is.
Then when we didn't have messages, you know, then you were calling people to find out or whatever. And then let's go back. Pony Express.
Yes, ma'am. And I love the fact that you brought that concept in, and I try to circle back around to my thought, but we don't like to wait.
Right.
See, that's a problem.
Right.
That is.
Waiting is a problem for us. Everything needs to be immediate. We need it to happen quickly. We pay more money to get faster internet connection. Like, how much faster can it get, people? I mean, at the end of the day, there's really not that much online in our devices that we really need. If we really think about it, it's not a necessity. It is an extra.
And Tiffany, we're not researching the damage that is doing to our bodies by getting on the internet. That's a whole nother subject.
Oh, totally is. Oh, don't let me go there. Okay.
We're gonna soundtrack. But
I will say, making it a priority, shutting down these devices. But then I also will say, particularly for those that are in marriage relationships, because we're dealing with dynamic and multifaceted attacks on the family unit, on our minds, on our health, on our children. At the end of the day, everything is converging on the family unit, and slowly but surely, basically fragmenting it and destroying it little by little, still killing and destroying, stealing our time, killing our relationships, destroying our relationships, destroying our thinking and our everything. So this is a very comprehensive and cunning work. And if we can spiritually see it as an all-out attack, like we get focused on the reality of like terrorist attacks in the lands, and we know that there's wars and continued unfoldings. If we don't realize there's an attack on us, there's a literal attack in our thinking, in our hearts, in our homes. And it's a very real present attack often. And if we can kind of change our paradigm and shift our perspective and go, snap, something's attacking my house, something's attacking my marriage, something's attacking my relationship with my kids. Oh no, because see, none of us would allow somebody to straight up walk up on our front porch and take anything from us naturally. None of us, at least. I mean, I had a great grandmama that beat down a man for trying to steal her purse, getting out her Cadillac in her carport. He thought he's gonna get away. She turned around and beat him with her purse, and he ran.
Yes.
You see? So if we can turn around and beat the enemy with our purses about taking over our households, then we'll get somewhere. But that has to be the focus. It's got to be a transformation of our thinking so we can prove what is the good and perfect and acceptable will of God. And his acceptable will includes intimacy and connection. And that means that we have to make it a priority. So marriages that are under attack, you got to let love win. Look at that real careful. Like, love is not easy because it's not supposed to be. It is long suffering. The very first word called patience. Again, there's that waiting and that long suffering. We don't want to do that. So the minute we had to be stuck in the house with our spouses is the minute we had to revisit our love factor, our love capacity. Am I going to be able to really operate as love in my home? Yes. So I think that these are just the beginnings of ways to address it. But I think fundamentally it starts with a choice and a transforming of our thinking and realizing what's really at stake, and stop acting like this is normal. This is not normal. None of this is okay, everybody. This is not okay.
This is not what we were created for. I mean, from the beginning of time, God created Adam and Eve, and family and said, and created it to where babies could be born. We talked about that in the last segment, and because I think about it, I think, okay, God says we can have the opportunity to be a part of his family by choosing him and saying yes to him, that I want to be in your family. And he gives us that beautiful picture. And then that is what, he talks about the family of God, the body of Christ. I mean, it's all a family, dynamic kind of thing. And so if that's the way it's meant to be, then that's what's healthy and good. The other thing, I was thinking about how you were talking about family, breaking it down. And oh my goodness, I just lost my train of thought with that. So we'll go on to the next thought I had. Whatever
Let
that.
me add this while you're helping yourself. Yeah.
I know.
So one word that you use, Tiffany, with all the wonderful things that you've stated so far, you use the phrase powering down.
Mm.
And I love that. Like, I wrote that down because that phrase to me is so methodical.
Mm-hmm.
This whole process of regaining the competency in marriage, competency in relationships, the competency in our relationship with the Father, powering down and being intentional on powering down everything, that we can have that intimate focus and time. So I just wanted to highlight that because that stuck out for me like a star. Powering down.
That's good.
I remembered. Thank you for giving me that minute. I had a senior moment. I had a gray hair moment. So I think another problem, because I have had to really, really work on this myself, so I speak from experience. I did not know for years and years and years how to have healthy conflict. Can you talk about that a little bit? Because I think in relationships, so typically, we don't want to have conflict, or we don't like it or something. And so we just avoid it, and we can, go into our phones or our laptops or whatever, because that's our way of escape, and we can talk about things on Facebook. Isn't it funny? We can talk about things on Facebook that we would not say to anybody in person. We would say something out there that you're like, I would never say that out loud to anybody in person, So talk about conflict resolution as a part of healthy relationships.
I think it's a great question. Conflict, I think it starts with recognizing that conflict is necessary. Just like pain, everybody wants to get rid of it, right? But you got to kind of have pain to actually prosper and to grow and to actually make progress. Conflict is similar, in my opinion. You have to have it. It's a part of the process of growth. Now, how you handle conflict is important as well, because you don't want to handle it in a way that can create more damage. And there's honestly a whole bunch of wounded people walking around. I think that the fact that there's so many wounded people is a lot of the issue and challenge with our being able to be relationally competent. And dealing with conflict is a part of why, or is one of the areas that we suffer from, because we're wounded. And if we could acknowledge and confess the woundedness and really purposely address the woundedness, then I think we can experience healing. Conflict, therefore, becomes easier over time, because we're dealing with the conflict within first. See, if you're wounded, the conflict is already occurring in our hearts, and we're just stuffing it and covering up and trying to go on with life and make it normal. But the reality is, you've never processed that abuse or that relational breakup or whatever happened in that moment of your childhood or elsewhere that has lingered and created this unfortunate behavior of escape or avoidance or even offense, like quick offense at that, and not okay to even talk through a matter. So I think us, first of all, needing to acknowledge conflict is necessary. Two, the conflict is probably within us first, and that needs to be addressed purposefully. And then once we're dealing with other people, getting to relational competence, they're wounded too. We need to know that they're hurting, and there's probably something that they need to deal with. And so if we can walk around kind of understanding that that's how it works, then that would help us get further down the road in dealing with conflict. I love what my husband tends to say. He says, hurt people, but heal people, heal people. And I love that, because it then puts the onus back on us to deal with our hurt and get healing and go to the healer and to use some of the practical things that he's made available through the body for that purpose. I've definitely spent at least the last 12 years of my life as an adult dealing with my own hurt so that I wouldn't continue to hurt other people. And I think that's a big part of the conflict resolution opportunity. And then when it comes down to marriage relationships or even relationships within the household with your kids, I think there are some very good ways to go about that. And oftentimes it deals with us being willing to listen to understand. And I love I think it's the Stephen Covey's principles that tend to be very classic that I think are helpful. I also love this book called The People Code, which really highlights very uniquely what is the motive or typical motive of a person and kind of how they function relationally. And the more we can learn about each other's styles of relating, the easier it is for us to deal with the conflict. For example, I know that my husband is the type that, first of all, he needs to get it all out. So I need to not interrupt him. Like, I need to be self-controlled enough to not want to interject. And that's not easy for Tiffany. Just saying. But I'm getting there. But the Lord knows he's working on me. But if I can listen well and acknowledge how he's, what he's experiencing, and then connect the dots to his style, which is he is a natural conflict averse person. Naturally, he will not generally give a whole lot of time to a conflict, but to engage him in that process because it's necessary to grow. Then I've got to know, okay, in order for me to get through this conflict with him, I've got to be intelligent, emotionally intelligent enough to recognize that this is the way this is going to work best for him and not be so concerned about how it's going to work best for me. And then likewise, trust him to be just as mindful about the way I process and when it's my opportunity to communicate. And there's room to grow there. We are very scholarly. America tends to tout, in some ways falsely, our academia, but we are idiots when it comes to relating to people and each other. I mean, honestly, and I feel like, you need to get a degree in this before you even bother a career, because you are called to be a career wife and a career husband and a career mom and a career dad, because that's what's necessary for family. And so those are just some ways to, I think, address conflict and just recognize its potential to draw us closer to the Father and each other. I mean, what's the point of having a savior if we don't need him?
Oh my goodness. I'm going to have this quote. We're idiots when it comes to, power down. Don't be an idiot if we were to end this.
Well, you know what? And think about it. I mean, we were in each other's head, I'm telling you. Well, I wrote it down, idiots in relationships. But if we think that we're idiots in relationships, the Lord's probably like, oh my gosh, come on, people, come on, and yet he is long suffering, and yet he is patient and kind, and he, it's just like dealing with your kids. You tell your kids something 100 times and they still don't get it, but then when that light comes on, you rejoice. So, man, you have shared some amazing information with us in this session. And I know that we have to cut it off because we've got like 1 minute before she has to dash out. But Tiffany, thank you so much for your ministry. Thank you for your heart for the Father. And thank you for sharing with us today and Meet Me in the Middle. I know that this information is going to be enriching to everybody that hears it. And hopefully it creates some deep dive conversations around the dinner table as you power down your devices to sit down and talk with one another. So Joy, anything else that you want to say to us?
Well, I just, oh my goodness, I have so much on my heart, and we could go on and on and on, but I want to honor your time. But we are going to talk more about solutions to several things that we've talked about in this episode, as well as the first one on the maternity health care crisis. We're going to talk about some solutions with Tiffany's connection and vision with the DandeLion House. So stay tuned for that in another episode. We got to leave you hanging just a little bit, so you'll come back. Tiffany, thank you, thank you, thank you. Wow, God bless you today and all your coming and going. And I just pray this is just a blessing to many and encouragement. More to come.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much. I appreciate you, ladies.
Okay, see you next time.